How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Owen Smith Show. It is officially Super Bowl week. Super Bowl 59 kicks off 6 days from now. You know the matchup by now. It is a rematch of that classic from 2 years ago between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. The Chiefs looking to make history, the Eagles looking for revenge. And I am fortunate enough to be joined by two spectacular guests today. First off is my co-host, always on here, Lucas Straczynski. Lucas, how you doing on this great Monday?
Marvelous as always.
And it is also marvelous that Lucas and I will not be alone tonight, as we are joined by a very outstanding guest, that being Matt Verderame of Sports Illustrated. Matt was kind enough to take some time out of what seemed to be a very busy day today to talk about this matchup. And Matt has been covering the NFL professionally for a decade. He'll be heading to New Orleans later this week to cover his fifth Super Bowl in person. And Matt also has a personal connection to this game, as he is a lifelong and diehard fan of the Kansas City Chiefs. So, Matt, that's enough for me. Let's hear about your career covering the NFL, your work at SI, and your history as a fan of the Chiefs on this unbelievable and one win away from unprecedented run that they are on.
Yeah. So I've been a fan of the Chiefs since 1993. I was five. My dad's been a Chiefs fan since the 60s. So I really had no choice. It felt like a life sentence until Mahomes showed up. But yeah, look, it's been an unbelievable run. As you mentioned, this will be my fifth Super Bowl covering it in person. This is the third time Chiefs have been in it. The first two times I covered it, they beat the 49ers and they beat the Eagles. So this will be an interesting one. I'll be in the press box on Sunday night in the Superdome, and my assignment after the game is one way or the other to go to the Chiefs locker room and paint the picture. So it's either going to be a very dejected group of guys, or it's going to be a historic locker room, and I would imagine a very celebratory one. Yeah, I've been covering the league for a long time. Started really nationally at Fansided in Chicago a few years back, and then 2 years ago, was offered the job at Sports Illustrated to be a staff writer alongside Albert Breer and Connor Orr and Gilberto Manzano. And so excited to get it going for SI. A few boots on the ground already this week as we're recording on a Monday night. I'll be down there Wednesday afternoon, and I'll be there through Monday. And then I have like 2 weeks to relax, and I go to the Combine. So, yeah, plenty of moving around this time of year, but that's okay.
Yeah, the NFL is no offseason. The NFL offseason is like literally 2 weeks. It's the 2 weeks between the Super Bowl and the Combine. So that's kind of how it goes. So we mentioned the historical impact of this game. I think everybody knows by now the Chiefs, back-to-back Super Bowl champions, beating the Eagles in 2022. The Niners, of course, last year, trying to become the first team in the Super Bowl era to win their third consecutive Super Bowl. They are the first team that has won back-to-back Super Bowls to make it back to the Super Bowl for the third year in a row. So they are one win away from that happening. So, Matt, you're the guest of the hour. What is the impact if they were to win this game on Sunday, which will be no short task? The Eagles are a phenomenal team. But if they win this game on Sunday, like, what is the historical impact of not only the NFL, but professional sports? Because the NFL, I think, is the hardest league to win a championship in. It's a single elimination tournament. It's not like the NBA where you have like a bad night one night and you could just come back the next night and try and win the game, potentially win the series. So, how would this impact the league, and what is this Chiefs dynasty? Because they already are that, regardless of the result in this game. Where do they stand in history at this point in time, and where will they stand in history if they win this game on Sunday?
If they win this game, they're the greatest NFL team of all time. Period.
Yeah.
No team's ever three-peated in the Super Bowl era. They've already done something nobody else has ever done, which is go to 5 out of 6. And, of course, they've won 3 of them. Look, if they don't win this game, they're still a dynasty.
Exactly.
I mean, they're still one of the top 3-4 teams of all time. They're right there with the 80s Niners and 70s Steelers and the Pats and all. I mean, they're already in that class. That's in stone. There's nothing that can happen going forward that they're out of that class. They're in it. They have earned that by winning 3 out of 5, by going back to back. They're there. That's not a question. This is now. I don't want to say it's gravy, but like they're now just trying to do something that nobody's ever done. I mean, this is something where if they win this game 4 to 6, the only team to ever do that is Pittsburgh in the 70s. But a three-peat, nobody, of course, has done that. And, look, the second this game ends, they're probably going to be the favorite to win next year's Super Bowl. Like,
Yeah, fair enough.
they're not going anywhere. Mahomes is 29 years old.
Exactly.
So, it's a lot of history on the line. I think if they win the game, you start talking significantly about, like, can Mahomes catch Brady?
Yeah.
Can he get there? Can he do it? you start talking about Andy. Is he the greatest coach of all time? I mean, because Belichick's got 6, but there's always going to be that case against Belichick of like
he hasn't won without Brady.
Not even having won. He hasn't won anything at all without like in his entire career spanning Cleveland and New England, one playoff win without Tom Brady.
Yeah.
You know, Andy Reid didn't win before Mahomes got there, but he went to a million conference title games. He went to a Super Bowl. Like, he was already a great coach before he got to Kansas City. And then he just went nuts when he went to Kansas City. Belichick doesn't have that. Belichick can't point to that. So, you know, that's the push-pull of this. If they win this game, you're going to start having those conversations, and rightfully so.
That's for sure. And it's kind of like house money for both of them, because if they lose this game, like Mahomes, they could lose this game like 40-0. Andy Reid's still a top 5 coach in the Super Bowl era, in my opinion. Mahomes is still, you know, a top 3 quarterback of this era, in my opinion. But if they win this game, I think you can make a legitimate case that the two of them, I think they'd be the best coach quarterback combo ever. I know Brady and Belichick won 6 together, but they never did this. I know they're the only ones that would be in the conversation. Maybe like Noel and Bradshaw, but Bradshaw's not as good as Mahomes. Lombardi and Starr, like Bart Starr, is not as good as Patrick Mahomes. So like you could make the case like it's the greatest coach of all time and the greatest quarterback of all time. Lucas, I want to hear your thoughts on this, because do you think this argument could be made if they were to beat the Eagles on Sunday?
I think it has to be. I mean, if they're not number 1, they're clearly number 2, and I think that if Mahomes wins, I'll speak to Mahomes' point of view, but if they win on Sunday, there's no question he's the second most accomplished quarterback in NFL history. Yeah. Because think about it, he would be tied for the second most Super Bowl wins, only behind Brady. He's already all alone in second place for playoff wins. And if the Chiefs win, odds are Mahomes will win his 4th Super Bowl MVP, which would only trail Tom Brady. And at that point, if he has a 4th, because a lot of people forget about this with Brady's career, as long and illustrious as it was, when Brady celebrated his 37th birthday, he only has 3 rings. Like, because he didn't win ring number 4 until he was 37 and a half years old. So like, because he had that 10-year gap. If Mahomes wins on Sunday, he has a giant head start on Brady, and like pretty much, not gonna say it's house money for the next 7 years, but like he has 7 years to pick up accolades, pick up rings that Brady didn't have at that age, because Brady didn't win his 3rd MVP until he was 40, I think.
Yeah, it was
so that just shows how insane this run is. Like, because a lot of Brady's career was just like, the reason why he accomplished so much was because he was around for so long. It's not that he necessarily had these short, like this long, continuous dominance. He had 10 years where he didn't win a ring, and he had like only went to 2 Super Bowls in 10 years. Mahomes, since he's been in the NFL, has won 2 playoff games every single year. And that just shows what kind of pace he's been on, and it's insane.
I'd point out one thing about this duo. Brady and Belichick, as great as they were, they did not change the game the way that Mahomes has.
Yeah.
Like, when Mahomes got drafted, you can go back, you can watch the footage. It was considered a flaw that he played out of structure, that he played out of the pocket, that he was not your standard stereotypical quarterback at the time of like, hey man, don't throw off the wrong foot, don't throw cross body. If guys don't do that now, it's a big mark against them.
Yeah.
Mahomes is the reason that changed. Because we saw, look, I'm 36. I watched Brett Favre's entire career. I watched Brett Favre do that. And it was always considered like, oh, he's a gunslinger, and it was romanticized. Like, nobody was like actively out looking for that in their quarterback. There was always this thought of like, yeah, Favre gets away with it, but nobody else should. Mahomes started doing that and became so dominant that it became hey, you know what? Go find the guy who can do that. Go find the guy who can throw crossbody. Go find the guy who can throw off the wrong foot. Go find the guy who can play really off script and off schedule. They changed the game in that regard. I also firmly believe, and maybe the analytics nerds can back me up or they debunk me on this. I think a huge reason we have seen the shift in teams being so aggressive on 4th down, I think a lot of that started when the first time I remember that was John Harbaugh doing it with Baltimore against Kansas City, where it got to a point it was like, if you punt the ball to that team, they're just going to score.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that they're the reason that happened. Like that, the league was moving that way anyway. But I think that a lot of teams, there was a little bit of a hyperspeed with that of like, look, we've got to find a way to slow them down. But the Mahomes part of it is the main part of this where I think it did impact. Like, Brady didn't change football. As great as he was, like I've always looked at him, and for those listening, maybe they'll get this reference, maybe they won't. I've always thought of Brady as Bill Russell. He's the greatest winner in his sport of all time. He's the greatest winner.
Yeah.
Mahomes is Jordan. Where you watch that guy play, and you're like, that guy, like, there's nothing you're doing. I mean, that guy's going to do what he wants to do. And it changed the culture of the sport. You know, I think that is where Mahomes is. And so are they better? Are they a better combination? It's debatable. I think they're the more impactful combination.
I would agree with that, because when you look at not just Mahomes, we look at all the top quarterbacks in the league, and we'll switch to Jalen Hurts here in a moment. Like they all play like that, like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is kind of like the last guy that's like a pocket passer, but even Joe Burrow can move out of the pocket a little bit. He's a good athlete, can run a little bit. So the quarterback, you want your guys to be, good athletes, can move on the run and can throw off platform and can keep their defense on their toes. And Mahomes was kind of like the guy that changed the game a little bit, the way he plays football. There is another quarterback in this game. Jalen Hurts is back in the Super Bowl for the second time in 3 years. Of course, had an outstanding performance in this game 2 years ago against the Chiefs. Maybe the best game of his entire career. But it's been a bit of a roller coaster, since that game. Last year, they start 10-1, but they have that epic collapse at the end. He played very poorly against Tampa in their playoff loss last year in the wild card round. And then this year in the regular season, they didn't really ask him to do a whole lot. It was really the Saquon Barkley show for the Eagles throughout the season. And then the playoffs, they in the wild card against the Packers, and then in the divisional round against the Rams, like Hurts didn't really play that great in those games, but to his credit, he had a phenomenal performance against Washington in the NFC Championship game. Threw a touchdown, ran for 3. The Eagles scored 55 points in that game. So Matt, Jalen Hurts is an interesting conversation, because when you look at just strictly accomplishments, like you look at his resume, like he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He's the only quarterback from that famed draft class with Burrow and Herbert and Love, like to make an All-Pro team. He's just the third active quarterback to go to multiple Super Bowls, Mahomes being the other. Russell Wilson's the third. Just the 22nd quarterback of the Super Bowl era to start multiple Super Bowls, so he's in for some prestigious company there. So other all-time legends never made it to 2. So do you think Jalen Hurts, with getting back to the Super Bowl, has proven his doubters wrong? Or do you think you need to see a little more? Does he need to perform at a certain level in this game, even if they lose, to silence the critics of him as a passer or maybe as a quarterback as a whole?
I think Jalen Hurts is a good player. I don't think he's, some people painted him, I feel like earlier this year, as bad or strong. I don't feel like that at all. I think he's a slightly above average quarterback. And every month at SI, I would do these quarterback rankings where you'd go through and kind of, rank them 1 through 32. And Hurts was always a guy that was kind of between 12 and 15. He's not bad, but I think it's fair to say the first time they went, he certainly played very well that year. He was an MVP candidate.
Yeah.
This year has not been that. This is not. I mean, this year has been about they have the number 1 ranked defense, and they have a 2,000-yard rusher.
Yeah.
And Hurts' job basically is not to get in the way, and that's going to be what this game's about. Let's face it. I mean, if Kansas City can shut Barkley down to any extent, they're thrilled to death.
Yeah.
Every time Jalen Hurts drops back to throw the ball, the Chiefs are thrilled. Okay, and that doesn't mean that's. I don't even mean that to sound like it does. It's not like I'm trying to crush Hurts here, but he's the lesser of two evils if you're Kansas City. Just kind of like James Cook's a hell of a player, right? But if you're the Chiefs, you're like, oh, please hand off to him.
Exactly.
By all means, please. It's that kind of thing. I will say this about the Eagles this year. I think one of the fascinating matchups in this game are 2 guys who aren't wearing pads. It's Kellen Moore and Steve Spagnuolo. When you look at the way Philadelphia plays offense, they are very effective, but they are not very creative. I mean, it is very much not a lot of motion, not a lot of movement. Going to throw outside the numbers, limited route trees, but they believe. Look, we've got Devonta Smith and AJ Brown, and we've got enough talent to just beat you in that regard. And Saquon's going to go nuts. And then the other side of that is you've got Spags, who will do anything at any given time, and you know what he's going to do. And so it's an interesting dynamic. But to bring it all back, that's where I think it's interesting in this game with Hurts. Hurts has survived this year in the sense that he has not made big mistakes. He's taken a lot of sacks, but he hasn't turned the ball over. Does that continue in this game? Against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, he didn't turn the ball over. Last year they played in the regular season, he did. Actually, I should say he didn't throw a pick. He had
the killer fumble, yeah.
He didn't throw a pick.
Nick Bolton ran it back.
Yes, right. In this game, can he avoid throwing a pick? Or do the Chiefs get him once? Because that might be the game. Like, if Kansas City's plus 1 or 2 in the turnover, they're probably going to win this game. So that's where, if you're Hurts, to me, like, if you told me he goes 20 for 30 for 200 yards in this game, you're probably happy with that if you're an Eagles fan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. And, I think if you're an Eagles fan, you have some confidence seeing that he has the ability to play well on that biggest stage, albeit against that Chiefs defense was not quite as good as this defense. And Spagnuolo,
sure,
I believe, has seen him a couple times. He did a great job. Even though the Chiefs lost that game, the regular season game last year, that Monday nighter in the rain, Hurts didn't do much in the game. Spags did a great job against him. I believe they sacked him 5 times. He threw for less than 200 yards, no touchdowns. So if they could have that level of success, and obviously with a better offense this year, I think that's good if you're the Chiefs. Lucas, what are your thoughts on Jalen Hurts? Do you think him making back to the Super Bowl is kind of, how do you view him as a player? Matt gave his thoughts, but how do you think the Chiefs could limit him in this game?
I mean, I'm a guy who views quarterbacks. I view accomplishments for quarterbacks greater than any other position because if you're the quarterback, you have, other than maybe the head coach, you have the biggest impact on whether your team wins or loses in a given day. And he's going back to his second Super Bowl. And so, like, how many bad quarterbacks can you say have gone to multiple Super Bowls? Not that many. And I mean bad, like, on a greater scale. Not that like he stinks, but like bad isn't like average or below average.
Jim Plunkett, I guess.
He's been to more Super Bowls than Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and C.J. Stroud combined. So, and if he wins, he has a real Hall of Fame case. I wouldn't vote him in, but he hasn't. Like, the debate becomes real because if he loses, no, he's not a Hall of Famer. But in terms of how you stop in this game, it's super simple and applies to every quarterback. But I think it applies, especially in this case, it's just to pressure him. And I don't really care if it comes from blitzing, getting home with 4, because according to PFF, when he's under pressure this year, he's 7 of 21 for 72 yards. Like, he's completing a third of his throws when pressured. He's a guy who, I know a lot of people view him as like a mobile guy who's like great at like making magic with his legs, but he's been much better, especially later in the year when playing within structure. So I think the key is pressuring him and taking him out of the structure. Like Matt said, Kellen Moore's not a very creative coach, not going to use a lot of motion, so it's going to be easier for Spags to disguise what he wants to do and blitz him. And I know I don't really care about blitz numbers when it comes to against non-Spags defenses, because what Spags is good at is disguising blitzes. Look at the final play for the Bills on Sunday, or a couple Sundays ago. Like, they gave the exact same look they've given multiple times that entire game, and then boom, like they went the complete opposite direction. So I think this key is just getting Jalen Hurts off structure and putting him under pressure, because he becomes a less accurate quarterback and a less impactful quarterback when under pressure.
Yeah, I was surprised to see how bad his outside the pocket numbers are for a guy as athletic as he is. So I think that's a good game plan for the Chiefs.
Go ahead, if you look at the numbers, because I have a column coming out on Friday at SI about my personal opinion of this game. Not to jump the shark here, if the Eagles don't get pressure before, they'll lose in this game. Yeah. We could talk about everything else under the sun. If they don't get to this guy before, they're losing. Fangio and all these different – that's great. I watched Brady for 20 years. And if you didn't get pressure on that guy, he's going to kill you. Okay? He was going to turn Brandon LaFell and Chris Hogan into Jerry Rice. Like, it was going to happen.
Malcolm Mitchell.
And the reason I bring that up is when you look at the other side of the coin here, the pressure rate thing is a real problem for Philadelphia. Like, their sack rates, the only team per 100 dropbacks that gave up more sacks were the Bears. The Eagles gave up more sacks, which you'd never think with that line, but Hurts holds the ball longer than any quarterback in football. 2.7 seconds per dropback. He will hold it, and he will stand there. He's mobile, but not in like a Lamar Jackson way. Mm-hmm. He's much more of like that power. But, he's not going to – he'll go down. He'll just fall down. He'll get sacked.
Yeah.
I wonder in this game how much the Chiefs are willing to play man coverage on the outside and just go after him in this game and just overload blitzes and A-gap blitzes. I mean, look, I also think one thing, too, in this game. Talking a lot about the Eagles' offensive line. Deservedly so. They're a very good unit. Chris Jones and Mekhi Becton, that is a mismatch in this game.
Oh, my gosh.
Mekhi Becton is a very good run blocker. He is not a great pass blocker.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be willing to bet a lot the Chiefs are going to walk Bolton and other guys up into that A gap. They're going to force them to block one-on-one, and Jones is just going to tee off on Mekhi Becton. Like, everybody's talking about Jalen Carter, and hey, listen, he's a terrific player.
Yeah,
Jalen Carter is pretty much going to line up over Trey Smith in this game. Like, unless they radically change what they've done all year long. And if you're the Chiefs, I'm not saying that he's not a damn good player, but like, you feel like, okay, we can hold our own in that matchup.
For sure.
Mekhi Becton and Chris Jones is a disaster for Philadelphia.
Oh my God.
Like, that is the kind of thing that you're a quarter in and going, oh my God, he's killing him. So I think that's something to watch in this game. The pressures in this game are not created equal. Mahomes is the best in the league at dealing with pressure. The best. Historically, great. Hurts is the complete opposite. Like, if you can pressure him, he falls off a cliff statistically.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm looking at PFF, and I know PFF's like some synonymous with Voldemort, but they have a stat called pressure to sack, which basically means out of the amount of dropbacks under pressure, how often do you take a sack? Jalen Hurts had the 4th highest pressure to sack rate out of all 25 quarterbacks with the minimum number of dropbacks. Patrick Mahomes had the 4th lowest, or about the 4th lowest. Like, there's a different, like, I'm the king of I'm one of those guys that said stacks are a quarterback stat. Because most of the sacks that a quarterback takes, they have some control over. They either hold on to the ball too quickly or too long, or they run around trying to make a play and they just take an unnecessary sack. Like, if you can get to him, you could finish. But the problem is, or what the Chiefs need to do is they need to cover AJ Brown and Devontae Smith one-on-one, which they're capable of. Make Hurts do one extra pump, hold the ball, because if he's under pressure, he's a completely different guy. Like, unlike most elite quarterbacks, most of the high-end guys, what makes them special is when they have pressure in their face, they're still able to make the elite throws. Jalen Hurts is not one of those guys, which is why I don't really consider him a top 5 to 7 quarterback.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. I think the eye test bears that out. Whenever I think those statistics, just watching those two guys play under pressure, I think it passes that pretty much. Lucas, slightly off topic here. Who are the 3 guys Hurts is ahead of in that stat?
The only 3 guys worse are Caleb Williams, Baker Mayfield, and Russell Wilson. So
not amazing. Although Baker's fine, not amazing company there. So talk about the Eagles a little bit. Of course, this is the second time they've been in the Super Bowl in the last 3 years, both against the Chiefs. Matt, what's your comparison for these two teams? As a Chiefs fan, really both you guys, which of those two teams do you think presented a tougher matchup? Because I think offensively, maybe the 2022 team did, because I think they had a schematic advantage with Shane Steichen instead of Kellen Moore. Hurts played at a higher level that year. Jason Kelce was still there. Of course, they didn't have Saquon that season. But I think this team's probably better defensively, specifically on the back end with the addition of guys like Mitchell and DeJean. Maybe not quite as good up front because Reddick's gone, Fletcher Cox is gone, Hargrave's not there anymore. Although Jalen Carter, obviously phenomenal interior guy, Nolan Smith stepped up. So, like, how do you compare these two opponents that the Chiefs have had in the last 3 years?
Look, I was on the radio. I was on the radio with Carrington Harrison on Monday, and he feels like this is one of the top 2 teams the Chiefs have faced in the Super Bowl. And I got to be honest, and maybe I eat my words big time. I think this is the best matchup the Chiefs have had in 5 Super Bowls. Like, I really do. I think that Eagles team 2 years ago was terrifying. That team to me, really, I mean, they had 70 sacks that year.
I know.
It's 70 sacks. Yeah. Like, because to me, look, the way I look at it, the way that I view the sport, when you're talking about a team with a great quarterback like Kansas City, it all starts up front. That's it. Like, you can have all the cover guys in the world. If you can't get to him, man, it's a wrap. It just is. I'm a New Yorker. I'm not a Giants fan, but I remember watching Super Bowl 42. And there was a coordinator on the sideline for the Giants in that game. My name is Steve Spagnuolo.
Yeah, wonder what he does.
And I had a buddy of mine. We were at my family's lake house. I'll never forget watching that game. And about the middle of the second quarter, I turned to him. I was like, you guys are going to have a shot to win this game. Because they are killing New England up front. I mean, they're just killing them. They're hitting Brady every time he drops back. They didn't have great cover guys. They really, I mean, you go back and it's Corey Webster and Aaron Ross, like a bunch of guys. But they killed them up front. New England just couldn't get set. They couldn't do anything. I was far more worried about that 2 years ago, where you just went, man, if Reddick is cooking off the edge, and they got Hargrave inside, and Cox inside, and Graham on the edge, and Sweat off the. I mean, that team, they had 4 guys with double-digit sacks. Like, to me, that team was scarier. Hurts was much better that year. And listen, Miles Sanders can't compare to Saquon Barkley. He had 1,500 yards rushing that season.
Yeah, he had a hell of a year. Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. Like, I feel like that Eagles team was a lot better. Like, that team, to me, that was it. To me, that's the best win the Chiefs have ever had in this
Really?
year.
Really?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
because the Eagles were loaded, man. I mean, the offensive line is every bit as good, same weapons. Quarterback played better that year. And I look at Barkley, as great as Barkley is. I mean, the Chiefs a year ago played Christian McCaffrey in the Super Bowl.
Fair enough. Both Offensive Player of the Year. I mean, I assume Saquon's going to win Offensive Player of the Year. McCaffrey was Offensive Player of the Year last year. And he got a decent yardage, but they limited him pretty well.
I'd almost argue, though, in a weird way, McCaffrey's the tougher matchup for this defense. Because he can catch the ball.
Yeah.
Barkley's not going to catch the football. He's not. Yeah. He's not a receiver. McCaffrey was a mismatch nightmare against his defense because of the way they can't cover anybody with the linebackers. Barkley, listen, I'm not saying he'd go for 200 if they're not careful. But, they are built to deal with that kind of a run. Where it's like, okay, look, this is a Nick Bolton game from heaven. Like, downhill, hit a gap, make a tackle. Tranquil, Chenal, Hicks, all the same thing. McCaffrey scared me more in the sense, man, you could flare that guy out on a wheel route and he's like a receiver.
Yeah.
So I don't want to come off like I think the Eagles aren't a good team. I think the Eagles are a very good team. But of the 5 teams they've played in the Super Bowl, to me, this is the worst pass rush they've ever faced. Mm-hmm. This is, along with Garoppolo, the least threatening quarterback they've faced. I don't know. I mean, I think the coach, Sirianni's a lesser coach than any other coach they've faced. Yeah, and I think, and you brought up Steichen, it matters that they don't have Steichen in this game.
I agree.
Steichen is a brilliant offensive mind.
Yeah.
Kellen Moore, respectfully, is not a brilliant offensive mind. And I just think the Eagles have to be careful about in this game, if they get behind the Chiefs meaningfully early, they got a problem.
Yeah,
because they will blitz him into oblivion in this game if they have the opportunity to do it. So we'll see. I think it's a good game, but I do think the Chiefs have a lot of matchups that favor them schematically in this thing.
Yeah, and Brandon Graham will be playing this game, but he had 11 sacks that year. I'm not sure if the Chiefs are worried about that too much. They have some good players up front, but again, it's not the front that they had 2 years ago, and they still sacked Mahomes 0 times. I mean, Andrew Wiley and Orlando Brown Jr., as much maligned as they were that season, really stepped up in that game and helped the Chiefs bring the Lombardi home. Lucas, let's hear your quick take on this, then we'll get to Matt's overall prediction on who he thinks is going to win the game on Sunday.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. Anytime the Chiefs are going up against let's call it an elite defense, the only thing I really care about in the end is, can the other defense get pressure with just their front 3 or front 4? Because that's it. Because if you get pressure with just your front 4, that's like a cheat code, because you're still bothering the quarterback and you have 7 guys to cover, and mathematically they're going to be no more than 5 guys in running routes, and you have 7 guys to cover them. Because that was the problem last year. One of the reasons why the Chiefs offense struggled in the Super Bowl against San Francisco last year was because they were just struggling to block. Mm-hmm. Because Vic Fangio's elite, they have a great secondary, but if Mahomes has time, Andy Reid's going to scheme up stuff to beat that. They may not get 40-yard chunks at all, but they'll consistently get those 8, 10, 12-yard chunks. That's all you really need. And as long as you just avoid taking sacks, that's pretty much it. And that's pretty much, I think, all the Chiefs need to do, is because this game is going to be controlled by their offense, win or lose. If their offense is a bad day, they're going to lose. But if Mahomes is one of those days where he's just on it, they're not going to lose.
And I could absolutely see that happening. I could see Mahomes just coming out of the gate and, oh my God, this guy's not losing the game. Quick, Matt, before you give your prediction, do you think this could be a Travis Kelce game for the Chiefs, given the way the Eagles play defense?
It could be. Look, the Eagles are good against the middle of the field, and they're good against tight ends. I will say this, though. Again, I think we get in a weird spot with these games where we're just looking at trends over and over and over. This is one game. And the Chiefs have had weeks to prepare for this game. This could be something. I will say one thing that would, look, I think it could be, I could see the Eagles devoting a lot of resources to stopping him. Mm-hmm. And that opens up other things. I could also see the Chiefs getting him matched up one-on-one with Oren Burks. And if you want to know how that's going to look, go look at the Super Bowl last year, where Kelce annihilated Oren Burks over and over and over.
Oh yeah, because I forgot Greenlaw got hurt.
Got hurt. Burks had come in,
yeah.
And they just went after him relentlessly whenever they needed a completion. Look, I mean, to Luke's point though, people I think sometimes get so enamored with the numbers of the whole season. We all do. I do it too. But Andy Reid is who he is for a reason. Mm-hmm. They're going to scheme up guys getting open in this game. I promise you, if he's got time, they're gonna hit somebody.
Yeah.
Hollywood Brown coming back changes everything because when you have speed on both sides of the field, it opens up so much. And now all of a sudden they can't just sit down there. And look, Fangio, it's an interesting contrast. Spagnuolo is like the ultimate riverboat gambler. You never know what he's going to do on any given play.
Mm-hmm.
You know what Vic Fangio's going to do. They're going to bring 4. They're going to drop 7. They're going to play a lot of zone. They're going to play some match coverages where they try to mirror the routes based on route combinations. On one side of that for Philly, it's good because if you're good at what you do, you're able to just execute it and play fast and play without thinking, and that's a huge positive.
Mm-hmm.
The danger in that is Kansas City knows what you're going to do,
Exactly.
and Andy knows what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the same's true on the offensive side, too. Like, the Eagles are not overly creative. Like, it's pretty much like, hey, outbreaking routes and Saquon. Like, Spags knows what you're going to do. That is a scary thought if you're Philly. Like, if they really have you schemed up, you got a problem because you can't change. You're inflexible. But yeah, I think it's a very interesting game on a lot of levels.
For sure. And watching the Eagles, kind of pass the eye test. And I think Eagles fans have complained about this in the past, even with all their winning this year. Like, they're talented enough where they get away with it, but they don't. It's not like facing Shanahan in the Super Bowl the last couple of years where you have that huge schematic advantage. He's going to create mismatches. Like, the Eagles just kind of be like, all right, our guy's better than yours. That's how we score points. And I don't know if that will work against Spagnuolo. We'll see on Sunday. Matt, before we let you go, you may have given your inclination of which direction you're going. Who wins Super Bowl 59 and why?
I think Chiefs are going to win the game.
Okay.
I think for SI, I picked up like 27-23, but if I'm being I can see us being even like 30-20 or something. I do not think Philadelphia is going to get to him. And if they don't get to him, it's over.
Mm-hmm.
We could talk about everything else under the sun, they're going to lose. If they don't get to him in this game, they're going to lose. I think Barkley's going to have a good game.
Mm-hmm.
I think Brown and Smith are going to get there. They'll have some good catches. I think Goddard could have a nice game. They're not great in the red zone, shockingly. Like, you'd think that team would be amazing in the red zone. They're actually like league average. The Chiefs are better in the red zone defensively than Philly is offensively.
Mm-hmm.
I could see this being a game where Philly has like 4 trips and they kind of split the difference and they end up with like 20 or 23. I just think in the end, stopping Mahomes for 60 minutes in this game without relentless pressure. Like, think about all the years you've watched Patrick Mahomes. How many times have they lost a game where he's had a bunch of time to throw the football? It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It doesn't. And I just think even if one of those guys, like, look, even if one of them's having a good game, it's Sweat or it's Smith, like, they'll chip, they'll help, like, they'll slide. I think Philadelphia to win this game is going to have to play damn near perfect. And they're going to need the Chiefs to make a mistake or two. It's nothing against Philly, but, man, like, to me, I feel like the Bills are the hardest team the Chiefs are going to have to face because of Allen.
Yeah.
I mean, that just matters so much who's playing quarterback. I think Hurts will be fine. Being fine against Mahomes usually is a recipe to lose. And I think he's going to do it. I think he's going to win again.
That is fantastic. Matt, thank you so much for joining Lucas and I. We really appreciate your time. And good luck in New Orleans this week covering the Super Bowl. And hopefully, for your sake, the Chiefs get the job done and complete the three-peat. So thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your night.
Thanks a lot, guys. Anytime.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.